Hey, excited to speak with you guys. Great seeing a lot of you guys that I met yesterday. Looking forward to meeting those who I haven't had an opportunity yet today and tomorrow. Shout outs to MediaPost. This is my first MediaPost Summit. Been having a blast, so appreciate you guys, and big shout outs to Grocery TV for all the the wet woodies yesterday. But yeah, great to meet you guys. I manage the North America media for our consumer brands. That includes the Lenovo Yoga, which is our premium notebook, our competition to the MacBook, as well as the Lenovo Legion, which is our premium gaming line. So I do want to, I guess, get vulnerable here for a second and sort of preface this presentation that I consider my role really more of a, marketing strategy manager, more of a budget manager rather than just a pure media manager. I do not come from a programmatic background, so I'll be the first to admit that I'm probably not as in tune with some of the audience capabilities and tactics and data as some of the other, extremely intelligent folks here in this room. But I want to give you guys this presentation from the lens of the value that I look for when I then go and justify continued brand investment in our partners when I present to our business teams and our co-funding partners that we as a company are very dependent on. So if nothing else, I hope you guys take some value away from this as what clients look for in terms of value from our agency and then our media sellers for value. Cool. And then, simple enough. There's me, there's my headshot. It's like 10 years old, I need to update that. So yeah, Lisa actually beat me to this. I'll give one slight correction. So we're the #1 PC company in the globe. We're still working in North America here, though. But I mention this because I feel like, as Lisa, teed me up here, I feel like this is a shock to most folks here in North America. Sometimes it's even a shock to myself here. That's because Lenovo, historically, we've been so great at selling units and selling, to businesses, but we really struggled building a brand and building brand differentiation, especially to our young premium consumers here in North America. And looking at some of our brand health study data over the last couple years, you'd be surprised at the number of people, that don't know how to pronounce or spell Lenovo. They say Lenova. I think Lisa even hit me with that, in one of the first times we were meeting. So it's close, but, still one vowel off. So, again, a little need to build some, yeah, exactly. So I need to build some brand familiarity here. A lot of folks, they think of us as a budget PC. They're aware of the ThinkPad, something that they've used for work, but they're unaware of our premium consumer brands. And then, here, unique in North America, a challenge compared to the rest of the world is we've got a fruit-based competitor here that I think we all know that, I'll be honest, they're very good at upper funnel brand advertising, especially toward our same young premium consumers. So we certainly have our work cut out for us in a very hyper-competitive market. And so with that business background, from my role, I'm looking at our unaided awareness, our results over the last few years, and we use Kantar. So not shown here, but 2020, 2022, we saw some pretty steady growth. We're in a good direction. But over the last year and a half, I'm realizing that we've really gone stagnant. And here I'm in my role. I'm having a very hard time justifying continued investment and making the case to our business teams, our alliance partners, and what we're doing in media is helping turn the tide here. And so we had a little bit of a reality check. We regrouped with our media COE and our wonderful agency, Assembly. So shout outs to Art if he's in the room. I don't work with him, but I do work with some of his wonderful teammates, and they're great. And we looked at all the analyses. We looked at some of our tests and insights over the last couple of years, and we identified 3 big areas that we were going to focus on going into 2024. So we're rethinking programmatic, and we're looking at more contextual targeting. We're pursuing more direct partnerships, diversifying our media mix, and then finally, we're maximizing retail media and growing our retail relationships with our key partners. So let me start with what I mean by rethinking programmatic. As a media buyer, I think DSPs and programmatic are always going to have a place in our overall media mix. I think there's value and inventory and scale there that you're not going to get elsewhere. But within these DSPs, what we found is a lot of success in, number one, shortening our overall audience breakouts. And so, we don't have 10 to 15 to 20 different audience breakouts. We just have a few audience breakouts that we're honing in on. But then putting a lot more of a focus on the contextual targets over some of these in-market programmatic signals. Now, this has been a little bit of a mindset shift for us just because we've been such a very e-commerce driven company, and concepts like brand building and brand familiarity, it's not necessarily, it's been, again, a little bit of a foreign concept to some of our business team historically. But again, we're facing these brand issues, and if we're trying to get honest with ourselves, then we need to be comfortable, moving away from some of these in-market concepts where folks, have been very warm to those internally because they understand that's where the ad is being shown very close to the point of product purchase, and target these folks that we know are net new, even if they haven't started the product research phase yet with some of these contextual targets. And so what we've seen is that, probably unsurprisingly, but our audience is actually very receptive to when they see these ads and these contextual targets with clear wins and VCR and awareness lift. Now, I've kept in market here just to prove the point that we as a brand still believe that in market very much still has a place in our media buys, but again, if we're staying true to our brand objectives, then we need to be comfortable sacrificing CTR in favor of these brand building KPIs. And so we're seeing these wins, we're rethinking programmatic, and we're seeing these wins in contextual targeting, but we're also thinking to ourselves, okay, gaming is such a vast category. How do we start breaking through in areas with our audience that aren't necessarily maybe strictly endemic to gaming, but we know that our audience is found? And so Assembly did a wonderful analysis for us where they identified the top indexing pieces of content for our audience and found that anime had one of the highest overlaps, with 39% of our gamers watching anime. And I'll be honest, guys, we kind of lit up at this idea because my partner in crime, my gaming brand manager on the business side, is a huge anime guy, and he had already been wanting to kind of do an anime project for the last couple of years. But that was sort of as a passion project. But this was a lot of fun for us because we already had an idea, we already had a direction, but now we had a really strong data point to back us up and support us moving into this strategy. So what we're doing here is we're taking this insight and we're marrying the contextual targeting with the creative, and we're building out a 30-second and a long-form anime ad targeting folks on both anime contextual targets as well as anime publishers and content directly. All right, and in addition, so, we've been rethinking programmatic, we're rethinking some of the creative, but we're also doing, again, as I mentioned, is just diversifying our media mix in totality. And we're looking at publishers that, may not necessarily have the scale of some of these DSP partners, but we know have a very strong audience alignment and audience overlap. Now, guys, I know this sort of sounds like advertising, 101. This is nothing groundbreaking. We're buying media where our audience is. It's kind of like, no shit, right? But again, we've just been a very performance-driven company in the past, and it has taken a little bit of a mindset shift because, no media manager here is ever going to get scrutinized for taking budget and putting on Meta, putting on YouTube, putting on DSPs, and optimizing for CPCs and mass views. So we have had to sort of shift the mindset and get folks to be more comfortable, again, pursuing these direct buys that may not necessarily have the scale, but we know that our audience is, and they have a strong audience loyalty there. And so I've included here IGN because I think it's a really good example of some of the data points that I look for to then go and make this case to build confidence in some of these investments to our business team and co-funding partners, and why we're divesting away from some of those historical partners of scale and pursuing some of these more niche partners. And again, I know I'm starting to get into hairy territory here. I'm talking to an audience full of programmatic buyers and sellers, but again, hopefully this provides you guys just some insight into, the conversations that we're having as a brand and why we would divest away from some of those partners into direct. And then I'll be honest, another thing too that I think is important to mention and just some of the dialogue internally that brands have is that I believe the ANA report that came out last year that, I think it was like 21% of programmatic sites are junk volume. That really sent a ripple, through sort of the dialogue of our media COE. And so this was another area that, was sort of encouraged from the media COE to say, hey, this is an area that, we know exactly what we're buying to really mitigate any kind of concerns that we have wasted spend. So I do want to harp on this just for a little bit, again, with some of the value that these direct partnerships provide us to, again, justify some of this investment. So here's a case study. I want to include this because we found a lot of success with these direct buys. And so here's an example with IGN where we ran a buy across Summer of Gaming. Quick background, Summer of Gaming is just a huge tentpole moment for the gaming audience. It's when many of the publishers announce their big titles going into the summertime. And so in addition to the homepage takeovers and run-a-site media, IGN also drove a lot of value for us in off-site social support, as well as some of the strong custom content. For example, they showed our logos and showed our product during their Summer of Gaming broadcasts. But then most importantly, we love seeing the strong brand lift here. And so, that was very easy, again, justification of why this purchase made sense for us. And this really helped build the confidence for us to say, hey, perhaps we should really look into more of some of these niche publishers. So again, I think really the two big keys to success here for when you're pursuing a direct partnership buy is just number one, identify areas that have strong audience alignment. And then number two, and we found this out through the RFP process with Assembly, is just find a property that provides, creative support and can help deliver some of the strong custom content, such as in this example. And then finally, obviously, retail media has been a huge focus for us, as I think it has been for a lot of consumer brands. And I'll admit, this is an area that I'm still really educating myself, that I'm still really growing into. And so I, think the panel yesterday was fantastic, and it was really reaffirming to hear that some of the issues and challenges that they mentioned, are also being reflected here with what we're facing. But just give you guys a quick Lenovo perspective here. So obviously, big area of focus here, big dialogue for us internally, because number one, as it was mentioned, we're all aware of just the sheer scale of retail media. 20% year-over-year growth. We know that retail media is not going anywhere. Number two, and this is specific to Lenovo, but I imagine a lot of brands face similar issues, is that it's sort of inevitable that we need to invest in retail media, because as a business, we have a lot of contractual agreements with these retailers to put in a certain percentage of revenue back into their marketing programs or back into their retail media networks. And so, quite frankly, this is something that we need to learn to be smart in, because whether we like it or not, there's a lot of context outside of just marketing. There's a lot of business and sales context with these retail media investments as well. So with that said, what we're doing is we are working with these retailers to grow relationships and hopefully get into a state of a more symbiotic relationship. And I think there's three sort of low-hanging fruits that we can get to. Is that number one, if we can build these data collaborations and we can get retailers to feel comfortable working with us on our first-party data, we can work with them to identify better audience lists and improve conversion rates. For example, upload our first-party data, find folks that have spent time on Lenovo.com researching a product but perhaps haven't made a purchase yet, and then we can really hone in on those folks with our retail targeting. Number two, this one's a little bit more cut and dry, but just upload our previous purchasers and make sure that we're excluding them from retail media so we're not wasting any spend. And then finally, post-purchase cross-selling of accessories. So for example, maybe somebody has bought a laptop, but they're unfamiliar with maybe our headphones or mouse pads, and then we can target those folks with catered content to, try and hit a cross-sell. So, I'll be candid, guys, this has not been easy for us. We found out that, a lot of these big retailers are perhaps, understandably very defensive about their data and haven't really been willing to work with us. But the approach that we've taken is that we've, seen a lot of these retailers, or excuse me, a lot of the smaller retailers that are working on growing their ad networks, or perhaps just hungry to scale and grow their businesses, have been very open to more collaboration and working with us. And so the approach we're taking is to work with some of these smaller retailers to sort of chisel our way in and develop case studies with them to then go back to the big players and say, hey, here's some win-win situations that we've seen working together with other partners. Would you guys like to take a similar approach and see how we can continue to scale our business? But at the end of the day, we've really just been trying to approach it as a win-win situation for everyone to scale our businesses, because in reality, it is. And so again, there's a lot of work to do here. It's a very new territory for both brands, agencies, and retailers themselves, I believe, but I do feel like we're going in a good direction here. And then finally, I'll just end on a quick happy note, is that we have been very excited to see with some of these strategies. We've seen some pretty quick results with our overall Kantar results for first half. So again, there's been a lot of different marketing levers here pulled. So I can't, just claim that this is all attributed to media, but again, we're pretty happy with some of the results so far, and we're, feel like we're going in the right direction. So awesome. That's all I've got today. Cory, any questions?
No, come out and see. I got a lot of questions.
All right.
Give them a round of applause. Good to see you, buddy. Good to see you, too. All right. So it was a really good presentation, Lyle. You did an excellent job. What's interesting right off the bat is that you're going back to something that hasn't really been talked about in a long time. But you're using data to drive your contextual, your partners, your other strategies, rather than just simply having a direct activation of that data and saying we're going to put it into a DSP and we're going to use it to find the audience wherever they might be. You're using it to then create the other types of partnerships. How much pre-selling internally did it require to get the rest of the team to understand this idea versus that direct activation of the data?
In terms of moving from programmatic to a more direct approach?
Yeah.
Well, it's really helped from the top, and we've had new leadership with the media COE, that comes from a publisher background, and so, it's been a lot of support from that end. But I think really the main thing has just been the added value with the direct publishers to get folks comfortable, and we've really had to pitch it in that case and say, we've got a content issue at Lenovo as well, and some of our assets, we're reliant on what's delivered from global, but that may not necessarily reflect all the messages or, perhaps moments that we want to support here in North America. So we've had to rely on some of our partners to build that out for us. And so it's both, the added value that we've seen, from the IGN example of hey, they're also driving a lot of off-site social support to their audiences, and so it's that incremental reach, that incremental engagement from social, for example, but then primarily it's that custom content that they can help us drive to connect to those cultural moments, such as the Summer of Gaming example, and having, our brand associated with that environment.
And also that anime example, right? You're taking a piece of data that identified this is an audience that is of interest, that aligns well, it overlaps with your audience, going and finding a publisher that you could then activate that with, and creating that custom piece of content, that more tailored creative that can be used in that place. Do you see that the benefit of just being able to do that is also comes along with the concept of being able to scale that? Like, do you take that, say, that animated creative, and then go run it in some other places as well, where you can utilize that, maybe that data from a more direct activation?
Yeah, absolutely. Just in terms of, how we can scale the anime ad toward an anime audience. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for that example specifically, anime is massive. It's only growing year over year. And I think I saw, one insight that, not every gamer watches anime, but every anime fan games. And so I think that's a good example where the scale is there. Clearly we saw the alignment, and so that's definitely an opportunity that we can, continue to invest. After we've got to run that test out. We've got to evaluate the brand lift results and determine if the incremental brand lift we're seeing is outperforming our regular sort of business as usual assets that we receive from global. But we feel pretty confident that the juice is worth the squeeze there, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to scale.
Yep. Now, one thing I want to kind of go back to, you had started to talk about what was the impetus to drive in this direction? Like, what was it about programmatic that basically lit that light bulb and said, you know what, maybe we can't put all our eggs in this one basket? What drove you guys thinking about this?
Well, we just needed to make a change, because we realized what we were doing currently wasn't working, and we saw the stagnation with the brand health growth, and and then specifically looking at our first party results, from our individual partners, we saw the same. And so, that, the Kantar results I showed were a reflection of the total market and not necessarily attributed to media. But, congruently, the media results that I was seeing were also running flat. And so I think that was really it. Is like, again, what we were doing currently wasn't working. We needed to make a change. But then also, again, it's been sort of that mindset shift of just being comfortable with more brand marketing. And one other insight that I didn't hit on is that we also looked a lot into baseline awareness of our audiences and whom we were targeting. And a lot of our old targets, like in market, and I think historically why we had been seeing that growth in maybe 2020 to 2022 is that we were doing a lot of in market targeting, but I don't think we were as saturated with brand awareness at that point. But I think we had hit the point where that had sort of been oversaturated. We had built the baseline awareness so high with that audience is that there really wasn't a lot more room to grow there. And so that was another sort of driving factor that, hey, we just need to start looking into completely new territories, which led us to some of those contextual targets that we knew that were relevant. But again, they hadn't necessarily, started the research phase yet.
Well, you mentioned too that you got these big, stiff competitors in the U.S. and then globally.
That we do.
And you were trying to figure out how to get above and beyond that in-market consideration. Did you find that it's just more valuable to hit somebody before they start thinking about buying a new PC? They start to be more familiar with Lenovo as a brand that has a premium luxury type of a line to it, so that when they do get to that consideration stage, they're already thinking about you. You're already in that consideration set.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really, the long-term strategy, that we have to face as a brand, because we're talking, our target is 18 to 24, but we're talking about laptops that are worth, $1,200, $1,500 or more dollars. And so we realized that, not all of our audience is perhaps necessarily going to be able to afford the products at that point, but, hopefully that's the halo effect to bring them in and maybe buy a, younger line. But just simply, I mean, being honest, looking at the Apple market share year over year toward that 18 to 24 audience, we can't just be submissive and just let them take over without taking a shot and trying to chisel our way in and maintain some kind of stronghold with that audience, even if we know that, the purchase may not happen until years later. So, again, I know this is sort of brand advertising 101, but it is the long-term strategy that we're facing.
But it's brand advertising using data in a better way, in a more efficient way to be able to make the brand advertising more effective. Like, I've always believed that brand and direct response are very intimately woven together. Absolutely. If you do them right. And you've got competitors like, we won't just talk about Apple, right? You've got companies like Asus.
That's the big one, though.
Companies out there that do a great job of going after niche audiences. Like, they go after gaming solely. Asus goes after gaming solely. Alienware, gaming, all that stuff. You're trying to figure out, how do I establish myself as a bigger brand at the stage of an Apple? And you're finding new ways to do that by spending money in a more efficient manner, but still being at the difference between awareness and consideration.
Absolutely.
Right? Now, you also mentioned that shockwave came at you because the 21% was junk sites. So what was the reaction internally? Why were people freaking out about that? Were they talking about it in terms of the inefficiency of how you were spending money, or the fact that your ads were just falling on deaf ears? What was that the ripple created?
Yeah, and it wasn't an immediate, hey, sound the alarm, we need to completely, divest out of programmatic. But it was a conversation because there already was an interest to pursue some of these more direct partnerships with the brand dialogue that was happening simultaneously of, hey, we need to figure out how do we connect during these cultural moments, and identify with these cultural partners. And that was going simultaneously as, hey, some of this purchases and all this budget that's going to programmatic, it may not be as valuable as we had thought, so we really do need to rethink sort of our approach there. And so that was sort of the dialogue. And
then this is a big question that I'm sure the people in this room would probably want to know, because they all want to sell you something. How does price factor into this? Right? Because when you go out of doing just pure programmatic, you can usually control that price and keep it down. When you go into doing more partnerships and context, usually the price comes up. Are you willing to sacrifice the efficiency or the perception of efficiency with price for the back-end outcomes and the metrics that you get from Kantar and so forth?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because, at the end of the day, my KPIs are just how I move the needle for those overall market Kantar studies. And, as I mentioned earlier, some of those publishers, they've got the audience alignment, we're seeing the brand lift, but the scale is not necessarily there. So it is a balance. But I think the way to look at it, and this is perhaps oversimplifying it, but it's the direction we're heading, is just look at a cost per lifted user metric. And so yes, we saw 36% lift in that IGN example, but we do need to calculate that out against the total reach, and then compare that to perhaps if we were to run a YouTube that yes, we saw 1% lift, but it's across millions and millions of users. What is the overall math? And so I think that's, we are going, in a direction that we realize we need to get a little bit more scientific in quantifying the results that we're seeing. But I definitely think there's a fair trade-off. And I know there's a lot of other, partners like, Attentively that will measure, a little bit more scientifically, on the true brand lift and what was the true brand impact that we're looking into. We haven't had an opportunity to explore those yet, again, just because of the budget and the funding requirements. But I think that's, again, maybe that's an oversimplification, but where we're heading is that cost per lifted user metric, sort of as the North Star.
And that, it's interesting because that's which one do you consider to be a more leading metric versus a lagging metric? Are you looking at that cost per lifted user up front? Or are you looking at other metrics up front and then trying to figure out on the back end? Because eventually it all has to impact sales, right? Even a cost per lifted user has to impact sales. So what's the closest leading metric to that metric that you guys are willing to bet on?
Towards sales or toward cost per lifted
user? The end sale.
Or the end sale? Well, that's always the golden question when I go and present to our alliance team and sales team is the impact. And yeah, it really is that, and that's been kind of a tempered conversation, towards sales, because really, the goal of a lot of these brand lift studies too is, what sales looks for is sell out to the retailer. In order for the sales team to secure a lot of those contractual agreements, they need to pitch the brand power of Lenovo. A lot of the pushback that we get from some of these retailers is, hey, we can't offer this shelf support for you guys, or, we can't accept the sort of deal that you're offering to us because you don't have the same brand power that a Dell or an Apple or, even an HP has. And so this is all very, very good ammunition that we can then, make the sales team happy to say, hey, no, actually, that's a perception you have. But if you look at these results, you can really see Lenovo's growing for these 18 to 24 premium consumers, and they're actually, outperforming some of these other brands. And so it's not necessarily, from a brand perspective, it's not always necessarily just pure unit sales, although that's certainly a golden question. It's also just driving business context to equip our sales team with those kinds of conversations.
So you're not just using these metrics from Kantar and everybody else to justify how you spend the dollars, but you're going and arming the sales team that goes and works with the channel partners to basically say, this is why we deserve more shelf space. This is why we deserve more of your input, your recognition, whatever else you can get from them.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and in terms of the actual, what is the impact toward unit sales? I mean, that's the golden question for us. I think we're still working through, the correct scientific measurement for that. So I'm definitely open to ideas and suggestions on that front. But it's been, that's really where we've gotten to a point as a brand where, fortunately, folks have internally just learned to sort of trust the secret sauce of brand marketing and sort of trust it that, hey, it's never going to be a perfect science. Like, yes, we saw a 36% brand lift. That's going to equate to X number of sales. That's sort of tempered off, and people don't have those expectations. And that's come from the top of, having a new CMO that's really done a good job of, building, the level of comfort for brand marketing and brand advertising. But again, it's just been a sort of, for lack of a better way to put it, trusting the mojo of it.
Right. And I know I'm lucky enough to know a lot of the people that you work with, and they are bought off on the concept. They understand the relationship between brand and impact on sales. You've just started this strategy this year, right? This is a new strategy overall for Lenovo?
Right. We've sort of been wanting to move in a brand direction, but just speaking frankly, I don't think we were quite equipped yet to understand the right levers to pull until very recently, when we really, dug deep and really, made some more pivotal changes.
Right. How long do you think you all have in the media COE? And the marketers in the room are going to be especially interested in this one, but what patience do you have across the organization to be able to prove that this is going to work?
Well, I'm pretty encouraged by some of the initial results that we've seen so far.
Yeah.
So, and I think as long as we continue, continue proving ourselves out and continue seeing that steady growth, and I think I feel confident that, if you're asking if we'll continue to get further brand investing, I feel confident in that as long as we.
For the record, I think you have a lot of leeway with this one because Lenovo does have that space to build its brand, and this is showing to be very effective doing so. So it's a great way to start spending the dollars.
Absolutely.
I think we're going to open it up for some questions from the audience because I'm sure some people here have some questions for you. So don't be shy. And
Anyone
don't
have
worry
questions?
if you lost your voice.
Well, I actually do, before anyone else can jump in.
Hit me, Lisa.
Well, I know when we talked earlier in terms of before when we were prepping and seeing what you were going to be talking about, I love what you said about how, most of your investment, you're in Amazon and, the big ones you have to be in. But you're also testing because you're not liking the transparency and what you're not finding the partnerships working. So you started testing out Costco's and smaller RMNs. Talk about that and what you're finding from that to help in terms of leveraging then these bigger RMNs.
Yeah, and I think that's really great question, Lisa. And I think that's really the goal of they've been more open to collaborate with us. And I'm a little less close to this. We have retail managers that manage those direct relationships with Costco, but we have found that they're open to conversations of, hey, yes, let's, we've got a clean room. We're open to, using clean rooms with you guys and ingesting your first party data and, working on some of those things you're talking about, such as excluding previous purchasers. And so that's really been the approach of just taking, doing what we can with some of the more limited budget that we have for some of those smaller players like a Costco, and then building those case studies to eventually, and this will probably likely come during the yearly negotiations with the sales agreements with some of the big retailers when they start demanding to say, hey, we'll agree to this contract, but we're going to again require a certain % of revenue to go back into our marketing programs. That then equips us to say, like, well, hold on, we'll agree to this, but can you agree to that to, perhaps open up a clean room with us and allow us to collaborate on data and again drive these what we believe is our win-win solutions.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think in terms of even giving you, if you're having success with the smaller RMNs and you have those case studies, do you feel like that will give you the leverage when you go back to a Best Buy who you're still investing in? And maybe they know that. They know you need to invest in them. Do you think they're still going to give you more transparency or give you more of those things that you're looking for?
That's the hope. They're a behemoth in the industry. I mean, I'd be lying to you if they, if I said that they didn't have a lot of weight, and a lot of say, but, that is the hope, though.
Anyone else?
Wait, I think Lenovo has a lot of weight now, too. So
we do. Thank you, Cory.
Welcome.
Portion tops.
Yeah, there you go. Love to see it. It's a fun
Michelle Harness with Wyland. It goes on a little bit to what you were talking about and the partnerships that you're doing with the clean rooms. It's more of a suggestion to you when you're asking with working with the clean rooms because we have a data provider. We're in there. They can supply that transparency for you. You may have to pay a little bit for it. But if a Costco or Best Buy is working with them and you're doing a data transfer with like a Wyland, that's part of it. If you're doing the first-party data in, there's a match indicator that tells from the first-party data in to what actually worked and get your output data from your campaigns. They can be a closed loop.
Yeah, well, that's the success. Yes, and thank you. Great input. And that's the success that we've seen with a lot of retailers, but it's even getting our foot into the door with the clean room with some of those big partners is the challenge that we're facing. But, okay.
I think you got a partner down there.
Yeah, we got a buddy right there.
Hey, Lyle.
Hey.
Hey, I'm on from consumer.ai. Great presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
So this is regarding your the sidetrack anime conversation that you had. What was the resistance you had internally? Because as you rightly pointed out, there's a certain overlap, but there's also not. And it takes a leap of faith to go after non-intuitive interests or segments that are not related to your brand, your product, your industry. I'm wondering what sort of appetite does your leadership have in other such non-intuitive interests that might not be related to computers or technology or printers or what have you? Do you think that there's a future where there could be an ancillary set of such similar segments that you could purchase and you could partner with?
Yeah, absolutely. And are you speaking to the anime overlap with gaming? Yeah, no, absolutely. Great question. And again, there's much more of a long-term story to that, as I kind of preluded to with the, we have a new CMO who really did a good job of, championing the value of brand advertising and connecting your brand to these big cultural partnerships or moments that we know our audiences even if it's not strictly endemic to the category. And so, that's the example that we have on gaming. But then on the premium side, we're pursuing partnerships with, musical artists we know, and the focus there is we're building out our young audience toward, we're building out our target audience to young creators that are using their device for, creative avenues. And so we're pursuing similar partnerships with photographers, or audio influencers or musical artists. And so there's definitely an appetite, and there's a level of comfort toward pursuing these cultural partnerships that, again, aren't strictly related to tech. Because we know that the vast majority of our audience, 18 to 34, they're not spending their time on TechWired or CNET. They'll be spending their time on Complex or TikTok or Instagram and following similar content on those avenues.
All right. Well, Lyle, thank you so much. That was an awesome presentation and Q&A by Cory.